Welcome to On Approach, your go-to podcast for expert insights in general aviation, proudly brought to you by AirMart. AirMart is a family-owned and operated aircraft brokerage that has been serving the aviation industry for over 50 years. We provide everything you need to make buying, leasing, or selling an aircraft simple and rewarding. Visit airmart.com to learn more. Our podcast discusses the latest trends, tips, and industry developments that matter most to pilots, aviation enthusiasts, and industry professionals. So buckle up, tune in, and get ready for a smooth descent into the exciting realm of On Approach.
Welcome back to another episode of On Approach, your podcast for everything general aviation. I'm your host, Kim Sutherland, Vice President of Development here at AirMart, and we've got an incredible lineup for you today. Today, we're going to talk about the world of aircraft engines in our episode, Powering the Skies, all about aircraft engines. I'm thrilled to be joined by an all-star panel of experts today. With us, we have Otthman Rasheed, owner of Triad Aviation based in North Carolina. He brings over 40 years of experience in engine overhauls and maintenance to us. With Otthman is Richard Diamond, his director of maintenance, who has been with Triad for nearly 20 years. Here at the table, we also have Austin Bourland, who is our director of maintenance at AirMart. He's been with us for about 10 years, and he keeps our fleet in tip-top shape, and he leads our maintenance team with his unparalleled expertise. And then we have Grant, of course. He's the president and director of sales and acquisitions at AirMart, and he brings his keen insight into the aviation market here today. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
So we're here today to explore everything from engine performance and maintenance best practices to the future. What is the latest technology for aircraft engines right now? Things that are evolving and emerging as new technologies, and which manufacturers do you think are leading the way?
I think the engine technology, we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Understood.
It's been proven, piston engine technology proven for over 100 years, which, came a long way, but it's still the basic technology. Now, there's people putting out, diesel engine, Rotax engine. There's issue with that when you fly up at altitude. Now, Lockheed is aggressively pursuing alternative fuel. I don't know when they're going to come up with that, but they are on the path. As far as I know, I don't know. I'm sure Continental is doing that to go do away with that on a low level. That's in the works. It's been in the works for more than 10 years, actually. But they always, engineers working hard on it to come up with alternative fuel. Really, you cannot add, if you want piston engine aircraft, there's not much technology needed to make it performance better and safer, other than the electronic ignition. Then you got the Continental tried and Lockheed tried the PADAC system and all that, and then they all didn't pan out. Basically, I don't want to say a failure. It's just too complicated.
Expensive.
It's a piston engine. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's a safe, reliable technology, old technology, actually. The whole improvement is what we talk about: the ignition system, fuel system. You can upgrade, Bendix or Precision fuel cycles. I think they're very good. You don't have to do much to them. I know it's had a lot of good fuel system. It's just they need to be maintained on a 100-hour annual to keep top shot performance, because they change their pressures.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything you got, Richard?
Well, the other thing I can add is I would say that issues of corrosion with the engine. For an investment, manufacturers recommend that they fly at least every 14 days. I would recommend even, less than that. I'd say weekly fly them. to preserve their investments, because corrosion is a big issue with these engines. Yeah, it's a lot of money is spent because of the corrosion. So I would highly recommend they fly 'em often.
So if you needed an
Don't
excuse to
ground
fly,
them.
you now have a good one.
Yeah.
Great
I'm just
excuse.
preserving my investment. I have to go.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
What causes corrosion is moisture, extensive ground running. You know, run the engine for 15, 20, 30 minutes on the ground. That's not good. Because you're introducing moisture and then you have to get it at the operating temperature. So you have to fly to purge that moisture out. Otherwise, if you lie on the ground for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you might as well just don't be that and just pour a cup of water in the oil filler mix. Because that's what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. True. It introduces more water.
Well, especially in the summer when the humidity is 100%. The only way to purge it is to fly.
Good point.
Very good point. Anything else?
That's about it.
Okay. Well, how about Austin? Let's ask you a couple questions over here.
Okay.
Speaking of flying, so how can someone optimize their engine performance in the different stages of flight? So during takeoff, during cruise, during descent, what do they need to do to optimize their engine performance?
I would go ahead.
I was going to say operate it as it's supposed to be operated, and whenever you're climbing out, whatever is the correct power setting, or manage your mixture as you climb. Some aircraft have ways of assisting you doing that, whether if it's an indication, or the SR-20s had the altitude. And in cruise, same thing. Run it at the mixture it's supposed to be ran at. If you're not running it rich for any other reason, operate it how it's supposed to be operated. And that's kind of a topic with me and talking to younger pilots that I try to get into their brain, is recognizing when something's not operating correctly. The manufacturer of the airframe might not always be the best thing to go by. It's a good baseline, but whenever you need to be able to recognize when something's off. So if you look at a Piper Turbo Saratoga, it's a great airplane, and I think the leaning procedure on that is to run it based off the TIT, where peak TIT is, and all that's fine as long as everything's operating correctly. And if you have an exhaust leak or something like that, and you're not getting a normal TIT reading, then you have to recognize, hey, my turbo's not getting as hot as it should. That doesn't mean you keep leaning it, and that's what people will do, is they see the turbo doesn't get hot and they think they can just keep on leaning it. And I'm like, hey, you got to get that out of your head. It's like, okay, that's not what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to run it a little bit richer, or maybe even though it's peaking at 1400 degrees rather than, up in the 1600s or something, then I'm going to use that as a kind of a baseline, and then recognize that there's a problem, whether it's a probe issue or whether it's anything. And I think that especially younger people are being more so focused on looking at their CHTs and just their CHTs, and that's it. And they're underestimating using your EGTs for things. So your EGTs are a direct indication of your fuel air mixture in your cylinders. So yeah, so they look at the CHTs, oh, it's 380, I'm fine, I can, la-di-da. But you need to be able to recognize what a adequate fuel air mixture temperature is. So most airplanes, is mainly smaller airplanes, if you lean it how you're taught to lean it, whether that's run it or lean it till it runs rough and push it back in like back in the day, or leaning it until it peaks and then going 50 degrees to reach a peak, they all come out in the 1400s, usually around mid 1400s. That's usually about where you want to be for a approximate leaning. And if you go by anything else and if you're seeing numbers that are different, then you might have a problem. And even manufacturers got away from EGTs for a period of time, and they have glass cockpit, but they only show TITs and CHTs, and they don't even have EGT probes. And these are on very high class airplanes that are $600, $700, $800,000 airplanes, and they don't show you the EGTs. Seeing a high EGT is an early sign of it could be a clogged fuel injector, intake leak, anything like that. So having that information is very important. And having probes on both turbos, everything kind of went back to giving you more information. But there's a period of time where there's just like, oh, lean it based off your TIT, that's all you need. Well, it's great as long as everything's working how it's supposed
Everything
to
else
work.
is working right.
If you don't have exhaust leaks or anything like that. So being able to recognize things and learning more of what you're seeing with your EGTs can help you identify problems, and it can help you. It'll save you money too, because your mechanic will spend a lot less time trying to troubleshoot a bad mag drop if he has a 4 or 6 point EGT system. He can see the cylinder. He has a lot more information, so which will end up saving you money versus buying that engine analyzer if you're debating on it. So that's a big thing with me. And then obviously, especially more so on higher powered engines, whenever you're going into a descent, managing your descent, don't just pull the throttle back, push the mixture in and nose it down. When you do that, I mean, your exhaust is probably the first thing that's going to start cracking, because it experiences the higher temperature change or the faster temperature change. So you get exhaust cracks, especially in turbos. You get cylinders cracks and stuff, and it's
Space shuttle descents and approaches are bad.
And no space shuttle descents. If it can be avoided, you might have to do something. But power back incrementally before you go into a descent. Plan it out. Give yourself time to get down.
That's very important. The descent is very important to prevent sticking valves.
Yeah, whenever you just throw the mixture in and pull the throttle back and then nose it down, it causes more damage than people can realize, and it can give you problems and cost you a lot of money.
ATC, hey, I want to go around, or I need more time for this descent. You can always ask for it. You got to ask for it.
Okay.
Otthman, you got anything else you'd like to add to that?
That basically covers it. I mean,
Perfect.
To say it's really simple technology, don't complicate it. What Austin mentioned is pretty much covered everything, but you mentioned sticking valves. It's all to do on how you descend and how you run it after you land. A lot of people just keep it full rich, and that's too much fuel. They need, but they taxi in for a couple of minutes. They need, especially a carburetor, they need to lean the mixture until they reach their place to stop. But descending, don't descend too rapidly. Plan it out in at least 10-minute period to where the engine will cool gradually, not shocking. And that's where you get stuck valve most of the time.
Yep. I agree.
So just like the car, right? Basically, you want to warm it up, or
No, we're talking about cooling her down.
So, cooling her down.
Yeah. So when you're operating temperatures, you might have 380 degrees on the CHTs and you're 1450 on the EGTs. And when you start your descent, you're going to have more airflow over those cylinders, which is going to start to cool them.
Right.
So as you're doing that descent, the more you rapidly descend, the more airflow that's going to go over those cylinders. So it's going to cool them even more. So what pilots will make the mistake of is like, oh, it's time to descend, and they'll pull more power out, which is going to provide less performance in the engine. So it's not going to run as hot. So it'll start to cool it down.
Right.
And then they'll compound that issue by pushing the mixture forward, which cools it down even more. So the best approach for a descent is you want to leave some power in, do some cruise descents. I'm a huge fan of cruise descents. I love cruise descents. Leave that power in, maximize that descent, right? And then as you're getting closer to your destination, begin to manage that power coming out. So, for example, if you're at 10,000 feet, you got to get down to 2,000 feet. In your mind, you need to be mentally doing the math. Okay, so I got 8,000 feet to lose. So I want to be down to 15 inches of manifold pressure. So real quick math, I want to drop an inch per thousand, right? So as I start my descent, I'm going to pull it back to 22 inches of manifold pressure, lose another 1,000 feet, 21. You're just working that down as you're getting down there. And then I don't put the mixture in. As I'm going through that descent, I will leave that mixture at where it was in the cruise setting until I start to get lower. Then I'll slowly start to put that mixture in. But typically, I won't even land with full mixture, even though the checklist calls for it, especially on 550s. And Othman will agree with this, and everybody on this table will agree with this. The 550, if you push that mixture full forward on your within 1,000 feet of touching down or 1,000 feet above your touchdown zone, that engine is not like that.
It doesn't like that. You said, yeah, right. And what? So for
It
my
will run rough, so you
Right,
do not
okay.
want to go full rich. So even though the POH and everything else is go full rich, I do not. I leave some of that out because the engine doesn't like it, and I where I've set it where I land is that's where I shut it off too. So I don't even. The only time I use full mixture rich is on departure and when I start it and a climb. So those are your three.
Okay.
So climb, starting. Yeah. So those are that's when you need it. So that's what you're
where
looking at.
experience comes in.
Actually, you agree with that, Othman? You agree with those phases?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, closed throttle descents are not good, and you can actually kill your engine and make it shut off, depending on the engine and if your fuel flows and stuff are set up. If your engine's running slightly rich or your idle mixture is set rich, and then you're coming in from 2,000 feet on final, and you pull the throttle off because you're high and you nose it down, well, your prop's still spinning. You're just pumping gas and you're not burning it, and you can shut
Filling
your
up the
you can just shut your engine off that way sometimes.
Wow.
So yeah, so those are things you need to really. So again, full mixture when you start,
Mhm.
departure, and climb. Those
Okay.
are pretty much the three phases of flight. Outside of that, you really don't need that full forward.
Okay. Okay. So help me understand what shock cooling is. Is that what we've been talking about? Or okay.
Shock cooling is when the temperatures of the engine drop too significantly, too quick.
Too fast. So that's
Okay.
what we're
So yeah,
yes.
if you take cylinder head temperature from 380 degrees and in 3 minutes you take it down to 200, you just shock cool.
And what's the danger in that?
A lot.
Contraction and expansion. So
Right.
you have-
Okay. So what happens? So
you
what
have materials in there, whether it's your exhaust, engine, whatever. And some of those materials, like are aluminum parts to steel parts, you don't want things contracting and expanding
two different
quickly.
yes, two different
Because
metals like that.
Yeah, whenever they do that quickly is when you form cracks.
Yeah. Exhaust cracks, cylinder cracks. Othman, what other shock cooling issues?
What it is you cool in the outside temperature. The CHT is measuring the outside of the cylinder head temperature, but internally, you got the valves and the aluminum head. The temperature is still high. What your CHT is reading 200. The exhaust valve and the exhaust guide is probably at 400 or 500. And what that does is just they'll cease together because you got lower RPM, you're not getting enough oil in there, and the temperature is still high internally on the components, especially the exhaust valve and guide. So that's when they start sticking because that oil, what you heard the expression coking, which is, just from the heat, it just turned to like gum. And,
Okay.
and then it sticks down. So that's why I say do not shut your engine down unless the temperature at 300 degrees when you land.
You bring the temperature down gradually, and in taxi, if you shut the engine down at 350 or 380, engine on the outside is good, inside is still boiling.
Boiling.
Okay.
You don't have air, don't have the forced air from the prop and flying to gradually reduce the temperature over an extended period of time.
Okay. That's
Don't
why
shut
when
her down unless she's below 300.
okay. And that's why when people ask me if I feel safe flying in small aircraft, I always say it depends on the pilot.
Yes.
Because experience
Sometimes,
matters.
you fly in a controlled area like big airports, they want you to drop out of the sky. You're not flying a turbine engine. That piston engine needs time to breathe. So you
Yeah.
plan it ahead of time.
I've got yelled at for that before.
And then they'll tell you go down now. But your engine is comfortably already ready and cooled down, then you can drop down, manage, you know, your descent and landing.
And in those situations, I mean, you just have to, as a pilot, you got to make the choice.
Right.
Either you could tell the controller, I need a different instruction. I can't manage that instruction. You're either going to have to turn me out or something else because I cannot properly manage that in this aircraft.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
can ask that, or there's other things you can do. I play with the mixture, and the airspeed. Those are typically the ways that I manage that, mitigate that.
Okay. So as a pilot, you need to be in charge of your machine,
Absolutely. Pilot in command, PIC.
pilot in
It
command.
all comes down to being
love it.
educated on what you're flying and asking questions, you know.
Well, now that's a good question, Austin. Is so in aircraft ownership. So you've got a new owner. They're in love with their airplane. They want to make sure that they take care of it, baby it, have it last as long as it possibly can. What top 3 questions should they be asking their mechanic to help them to be more involved with their airplane?
Asking their mechanic.
Yeah.
Richard, go ahead and take that one.
Richard,
Oh,
you
sure,
Take it.
Richard,
Yeah,
go on.
ahead.
Sure, I'll take that. They should ask about the, you know, the condition of their engine. Ask about the compressions. How does the engine look overall? What did the oil filter look like inside? Any materials? Anything to be concerned about for, you know, the future? That's, I think, the biggest ones there. Just be more proactive in what's going on with your engine.
Have them all in the cabin and then ask questions and
Look at it
let them
yourself.
understand how the compartment, every compartment, the line, the hoses, everything.
Just ask for, you know, did it just pass annual, or does it, you know, things look a little rough, or just give a good, I want to say, how do I want to say, get a good idea of what your engine is. Really take a look at it yourself, but be involved, you know, in depth with it. Ask questions, get an idea of where it's at instead of just past annual. Thank you.
Maintenance,
right.
like I said, I sum it in the same word I said before. Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance.
Yeah.
And knowledge of the people that doing the maintenance. A lot of people,
Absolutely.
the knowledge is not there. It's just redundancy. Believe me.
Yep. What I tell
ask questions.
what I tell a lot of our customers is to every now and then take it to a different mechanic. So everybody's got their favorite mechanic they take it to, and not every airplane owner and pilot is maintenance savvy or smart, and they don't want to be. They want to know how to fly it and how to operate it properly.
Right.
And everybody's got their favorite mechanic, and I tell people every now and then take it to somebody else. You know,
I think that's good
completely
advice.
That's an excellent point. It's an
Good.
excellent point. And
Yeah.
and when people ask me, you know, hey, how many owners has this airplane had? You know, I
Oh,
want
right.
to buy
Yeah.
a one owner airplane, and I tell them I don't want to buy a one owner airplane
Right.
because that means that one guy has been operating it and that one mechanic's been working on it. You know, I want an airplane that's been bought and sold multiple times because it's been through multiple pre-purchase inspections, it's been through multiple shops, it's been through multiple hands, multiple eyes have looked on it. So the more owners, the better, because
Right.
you have more people looking at that airplane.
Well, and you have different pilots with different styles and different experiences, and you want to know if that plane can take and what it's been through all the different stresses that could be on it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah, and I would say an underlying theme here that we've all been talking about that I think it's really, really important is the aircraft owner only reads the POH. They've got to pull out that Continental or that Lycoming operator manual. So if they get so fixated on just the air manufacturer's manual and not reading the Continental or the Lycoming operating manual, they've got to get in the habit of doing that. The number of pilots that don't do that, number of owners that don't do that, it's ridiculous. And I'm sure, you know, Richard probably scratches his head all the time. He's like, well, did you read the manual on
Right.
how to operate the motor? So they're like, oh, I read the POH. And you're like, no. The engine manual. So I would say people really need to pull out those engine manuals, and because that's where you find your cold temperature operations, proper CHTs, TITs. And so you guys agree with that, Otthman and Richard?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They really need to be proactive and involved in the operation of that engine, and don't wait till something bad happens and you're in the middle of it.
Right.
Know your emergency procedures.
No.
But
Yeah.
no,
too late
just
then.
tell the engine.
Yeah, it's a wait. Where's my manual? Yeah, it's on fire.
Hey, exactly.
So,
But yeah, I've had an experience where an owner, he come out and lift his aircraft cowlings off, and he actually started leaning on one of the engines with his arm, and he said, "I'd like to know a little bit more about my engines." And he said, "Can you show me what a cylinder looks like?" I said, "Well, your arm's leaning on them."
wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to know what's under the hood.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's why we're talking today. So we've been talking about how to make sure that our aircraft and its engine performs well and what to do to help that to happen and to extend its life. But let's talk about those emergency situations where something is going wrong and now you are having to deal with a situation. So what kind of practical strategies do you have for managing some kind of in-flight emergency like a fire or a loss of oil pressure? Otthman?
Well,
Yeah, well, I'll let Richard answer that.
I'd say first and foremost, fly the aircraft. And then, of course, like I say, in advance, know your aircraft and emergency procedures so that you're not overloaded and you know really what to do.
And don't panic. Panic will kill.
Yeah. So, like I said, first and foremost, fly the aircraft first. And then second, know your emergency procedures.
That's great.
They come second nature and you're not overloaded.
That makes sense, and that goes back to the experience of the pilot as well. Do
Yeah.
you have anything else to say about that, Grant? You look like you had
Richard's absolutely right. You just fly the plane.
fly the plane.
Keep a level head. Fly the plane.
Fly the plane.
Yeah.
Fly the plane. The plane will fly if you get altitude, and you can put it down and walk away from it. Don't try to save the airplane. Save your behind.
Yes. Yeah. One thing on that is what a minor off-field landing when it turns into more of a fatality, it's usually because that last little bit is when they stall the airplane. They quit flying the airplane. They get low.
Yeah.
They get scared. They're trying to make that good spot over there, and they stretch it when they shouldn't. And if you look at accident reports and stuff, it's almost a much higher percentage of the fatalities are because witnesses saw the airplane nose down at the last minute.
Stall spin.
Even if you're landing in the
sure.
trees, like whenever I was learning to fly, even if you're landing in the trees, don't stall it above the trees because your chance of survivability, even landing in the forest, goes way up whenever you don't stall it. Because the second you stall it,
90% of fatality in aircraft accident is pilot error, or more than 90%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bottom line
You
is
can put that
fly the
in.
plane.
Yeah.
Fly the plane first, yes, and foremost. Don't play mechanic. Just fly the airplane
Be the
first.
pilot first.
Find a field.
Yeah,
Look
be the
around
pilot
and
first.
find a field and put it down.
Yeah, and knowing the difference when to try to push it to a airport and when to not push it to an airport, you got to have that line in the sand in mind before you fly, because you don't want to catch on fire. You're in much worse shape if you catch on fire. So
And most flight school, train, people for that.
yeah, and it's understandable people panic and they're apprehensive about doing an off-field landing.
Sure.
And they try to stretch it to an airport, but like know in your head what your limitations are and
Know your aircraft.
Yeah, at what point you just shut the fuel off, power it back, and land where you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of flight safety, do engine analyzers really help improve flight safety? How do those help with safety and?
They can help troubleshoot, if you ask some of that, but
A lot of people
they help you operate the engine more precisely. If you have a cylinder that's going down, something's wrong with that cylinder, you can pinpoint it a lot quicker, maybe respond to it. If nothing else, it's you get down on the ground safely into a repair station, you can say, my number 2 cylinder, fell off in temperature, so there's an issue.
Yeah, they help. They're important. A lot of people panic when they see something wrong. It's an early indication of something. Address it with your mechanic.
Yeah.
They're more precision with this day of getting lean a peak. It's really important to have them so you can do it precisely. But there's a lot of advantages to them.
Definitely there is, yeah. But sometimes people will just panic and something is wrong. They just early warning tell you what's going on so you know how to behave if you fly an airplane, whether you need to land or whether you need to take it to your mechanic. Again, it's a simple engine. Got redundancy. Those instruments will help you, the CST, EGT, manifold pressure, TIT on a turbocharged engine. All that will give you indications. Hey, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
And discuss it with your mechanic. So they are good, definitely.
You can lose a CHT, and I get this call a lot. My CHT fell off. There's something wrong with the cylinder, and I'll ask them, how was your EGT? Oh, it's just fine. Just hold the temperature, and you can do it across the opposite. CHT is fine, great temperature, and then the EGT falls off. I said, well, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, EGTs are very sensitive because they operate under they are in a high heat environment, and so they're more susceptible to failing, basically.
Yeah, I agree with them. I think that engine analyzers are they're a very good investment. They're right in the aspect of people, whenever you have more things to look at, they hyper focus on one thing whenever there's a small variation. But if you go about it correctly and you see your manifold pressure, I've had this happen to me, your manifold pressure is not looking right. Well, instead of freaking out because your manifold pressure is not right on a turbo airplane, did your EGTs change? Did your oil temperature change?
Right.
Is their fuel flow
In
changing?
context, right? Everything in context.
Yeah, so you have to keep a level head about it. But I think they can also increase safety quite a bit. And I can give you an example. I had a pilot that came in, said he was flying an airplane throughout the day, and he was in between flights, and he said his EGT was running a little high. It wasn't out of the ordinary, no other indication. And he was like, do you care to look at it really quick? And I was like, yeah, I'll look at it really quick. Took the cowling off, and it was just a little higher EGT, and the entire exhaust head riser was cracked all the way around and cracked off. So they can be indicators of things. The airplane was flying fine and everything. But so they're a very good investment to have. And but you just can't let them, like they said, you can't hyper focus on things.
Get information overload.
Right, exactly. Right. That makes sense. All right. Well, as we get ready to wind things down here, I'm going to ask each one of you a parting question. We'll start with Richard. What one piece of advice would you give to a new aircraft owner about understanding and maintaining their aircraft engine? You can just give them one piece of advice. What's it going to be?
Have it thoroughly checked if they're just bought the aircraft, but I would say know the engine. Get to know the engine well and understand it, how to be operated properly.
Okay, Otthman, how about you?
Save a lot.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm on with him. It's you need to spend time and invest in knowing how your engine operates, and don't stick with one mechanic that has a good reputation and keep him maintaining your aircraft and keep an open communication.
That's good.
But the important thing is knowing your aircraft, knowing how it operates, will help you make decisions while you're flying. If you know how the engine operates, how the CST works, how the mixture works, how the manifold pressure works, they'll go a long way and help you fly the airplane calmly.
Okay. How about you, Austin? One piece of advice.
For someone buying an airplane?
For someone they're a new aircraft owner.
It kind of goes along the same lines as them, is fly the airplane, invest in things like a hangar. Airplanes, they sit on the ramp, it's horrible for them. And know your mechanic and know who's working on your plane and how knowledgeable they are and how diligent they are. And that if you do those things alone, you'll be protecting your investment by quite a bit.
And
In general aviation, one derogatory comment. In general aviation is probably the highest percentage of crooks. They'll get you. So I just leave that the way that is.
So know your shop, right?
Know your shop, yep.
Definitely.
Right.
That's a good idea. And when you find a good one, keep them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Grant, you advise new aircraft owners all the time. So what would your one piece of advice be?
Read the engine operating manual, please, for all
Read
of
it.
us, for everyone, for the engine shop, for the guy that sold you the airplane. Read.
Read it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. That wraps up today's episode of On Approach. A huge thank you to our incredible guests, Otthman Rasheed of Triad Engines and Richard Diamond, plus our own Austin Bourland here from AirMart. And of course, as always, Grant, my spouse and partner in this business. So we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of aviation power plants and found some valuable takeaways for your own journey. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And speaking of episodes, make sure to tune in next time as we gear up for EAA AirVenture 2024 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We'll have expert advice from our 2023 team to help you make the most of this year's event, so you won't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Kim Sutherland, and thanks for listening to On Approach. Clear skies and safe flying, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to On Approach, your go-to podcast for expert insights in general aviation. Join us next time for another smooth descent into the exciting realm of On Approach, proudly brought to you by AirMart. AirMart is a family-owned and operated aircraft brokerage that has been serving the aviation industry for over 50 years. We provide everything you need to make buying, leasing, or selling an aircraft simple and rewarding. Visit airmart.com to learn more.